Anderson is our speaker tonight. She's the Director of Communications and Programming for the Florida Native Plant Society, and she is a GIS consultant. She has a bachelor's degree in horticulture from the University of Florida and a master's in GIST from the University of Southern California. She's been engaged in protecting conservation land in Florida since 2017, leading the fight to save split oak forest, wildlife, and environmental area in the Orange and Osceola Counties. She's one of the primary people trying to keep the toll road from being built.
Yeah, so thank you for having me speak at your meeting. Following your concern about this property and the newspaper articles, other media about the Gladys Douglas property, and anxiously hoping that this place can be protected. You know, we have scrub here in Central Florida. So what is, obviously, you know, you guys are Native Plant Society members, but for anyone who is sort of new to understanding Florida's ecosystems, Florida scrub is a kind of ecosystem, also known as a natural community. And it's basically a recognizable assembly of plants, animals, soil, and climatic conditions. So recognizable by humans, categorizable by humans. And scrub specifically is multi-layer, usually, of evergreen scrubs with or without a canopy of pines on dry sandy ridges. Now in Pinellas County, it might not seem like you guys have dry sandy ridges, but I have pulled out some scrub soils, so later in the presentations you might see that. Florida scrub is G2S2, which means it's globally and state endangered, as listed by NatureServe and the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. So the conditions of scrub, as you might have experienced if you visited any, it's hot. The white sand reflects light and heat. There's not much of a canopy, so not like a hammock. And it's dry, there's no ponding, and there's frequent fires. So everything there except for the frequent fires makes it quite developable. And combining that with the rules protecting wetlands from development and, you know, the ease of developing these sandy soils, the ease of placing roads, commercial development, foundations, makes scrubs very, very vulnerable to development. So think white, maybe sometimes yellow, mostly bare sand. And specifically in your rosemary balds, you'll see even more open space because of the rosemary allelopathy. Depending on the fire frequency of scrubs, which may range from 5 to 40 plus years, you may have short trees and shrubs, or you may have a thicket in some sandpine areas. And sandpines, Florida scrub has a unique set of species adapted to this very harsh environment. So Florida scrub has a high level of endemism, which means that things that live in the Florida scrub, whether they be plants, animal, or fungi, often this is their only place to live. Okay, so here is a commonly shown map of the ridges in Florida, focusing on the Lake Wales Ridge, which is where most of the scrub in the state is, and the Mount Dora Ridge, Ocala National Forest. Now, I'm over here in Orlando and Kissimmee, so we have the Orlando Ridge. And it seems like you guys are kind of left out of the scrub loop. So there's the Lake Wales Ridge, and then there's my ridge. I'm there just east of that large lake. And you guys can't seem kind of like, you know, there wasn't much scrub to begin with, but I've pulled out potential scrub soils. So not all of this is going to be scrub. Some of it's going to be hammock. Some of it might be scrubby flatwoods, scrubby sandhill perhaps. But this is potential extent of historical scrub. So obviously it would be ideal if we had, say, a statewide historical ecology that had been done, but nobody has paid for that to happen yet, so that I could pull a layer of actual historical ecological data, but that's not happening yet. So you can see that your park, your potential park, Gladys Douglas, is a small remnant of scrub, which should be protected. Just a little close up. See the Gladys Douglas there in the center left in orange. So I had some videos in here, but they don't appear to be playing. They don't appear to be able to play. So this is some scrub oaks in front of a sandy trail in Lake Lizzie, so on the Orlando Ridge. Let's give an idea of what a scrub looks like. So as I mentioned previously, Florida's historically fire maintained. And your sandpine scrub that's sort of on the outside might have a 10+ year interval. Bald might have a 10 to 40 year interval. So why is fire maintenance important? So one of the problems with buying and maintaining scrub habitat for government agencies and local governments is that it has to be burned. And it's specifically in the case of scrub, it can be hard to replicate the management with chopping, mulching, some of them flail mowing. They can be equivalent, nearly equivalent if done right, but really fire is the best management practice. And when you have these urban interfaces or suburban interfaces, or you don't have the staff or the know-how to burn, sometimes these properties degrade quickly when not managed. And as the state has not had very much land funding, there might be scrubs that were really good. They might have been able to host scrub jays or sand skinks, but they grew up. And over time, while their applications were pending and they were not being protected. And so making them now in a category that they have to be restored rather than just managed. And so that's stated in a lot of the Fish and Wildlife Service documents about the problem with that's one of the reasons why scrub is declining. So scrub is fire maintained. This photo is by my friend Danny Gooding of a scrubby flatwoods in the UCF Arboretum. So that would be an example of sort of a lower interval fire, like a lower time interval fire. And this would be a little bit longer time interval fire, not completely stand replacing, but still really hot. And then that would be a stand replacing sandpine fire. This is a photo from the Ocala National Forest via the Florida Forest Service.
Valerie, let me ask you a question. I mean, what is the purpose of the burning? What does that do for the plants and the things there? Why is that important?
So the most important thing about the fire is structural, letting light in and clearing out the soil surface for germination and for resprouting. So what happens is when a scrub grows up, there's too much competition. And the things that are rare in Florida, the things that are endemic, the things I'll show later in the presentation, these are often smaller plants that are easily competed out of existence. And so if you are to replicate fire with, say, coming in with a flail mower, it's important to remove the biomass afterwards to replicate sort of the consumptive parts of burning. And then, of course, there are plant adaptations to fire that include only the seeds only coming out of dormancy if there is fire applied. Okay, so the plants of sandpine scrub and rosemary bald have high endemism, which means endemic is a term that refers to a species only occurring in a certain area. So if you say something is endemic to Florida, that means it only occurs in Florida. If you say it's endemic to sandpine scrub, that means it's endemic to sandpine scrub anywhere where sandpine scrub occurs. Endemic to Osceola County, my county, that means it doesn't occur anywhere outside of Osceola County. So a good real life example is Dicerandra modesta, which is a blushing scrub balm, which only occurs in Polk County. And the only known extant occurrence of that plant is, the only population is in Horseshoe Creek scrub, which is where we do monitoring. The plants also often have waxy coating and or hairs for heat evapotranspiration adaptations. We'll see that as we go through some sample plants of scrub. And they often also have underground storage organs or fire-triggered seed dormancy traits. So here's one of our volunteers on a plant rescue holding up a huge taproot. So this taproot enables a plant to resprout after a burn. And then on the right is a saw palmetto with its long horizontal stem, which also stores carbohydrates for resprouting and water in case of droughts. This is Opuntia austrina. I guess we're now calling it that. So that's Florida prickly pear. And so obviously there's water storage in those cactus pads. And then on the left is Sideroxylon, and those are leaves that are pointed upward to reduce horizontal for the light hitting it horizontally, and also to reduce evapotranspiration. You can sort of see the bronze fuzzy bits on the bottom, and then that's an oak of unknown species to me, with leaves also curled upwards. So since you have a rosemary bald in the center of your property, starting with Florida rosemary, Stradiola ericoides, it is the dominant ground cover of rosemary balds. It does also occur in sandpine scrubs, and it's allelopathic, which means its root exudates suppress nearby plant growth, and that compound is called cereatiolin. And plants, obviously, they transport water and nutrients up and down their stem, but when they're growing, they don't just take water from the soil, they also issue out root exudates, and they might be interacting with fungi, and they might be issuing these chemicals that make it hard for other plants to grow. So you can see these open spaces around that rosemary in the center. And the photo on the left is from our rescue site in Shadow Bay Park, which is in Orlando. An incredible rosemary bald, which unfortunately was poorly managed into basically nothingness. And then on the right is a photo by Paul Marcellini of Archibald Biological Station of obviously a very well managed rosemary scrub. So this would be ideal. And of course it would be ideal to be taking a photo with such a beautiful lens so you could get that sunburst. And here's another photo of that rosemary scrub in Shadow Bay State Park. You can see the sand pines in the background. So Charles Cook asked if I'd suggest a survey for endemics such as sand swimmers. I'm assuming you mean sand skinks. So sand skinks are possible on the site. However, my experience in split oak and, knowing what I know from sand skink biologists is that sand skinks only go above a certain elevation. It's possible to find them below a certain elevation, but the likelihood goes way, way down. And so the likelihood that you have sand skinks is not very high, unfortunately, but it might be worth putting out a cover board or two. I mean, I think that could be really worthwhile.
Valerie, what's a cover board?
Oh, a cover board is basically a large plywood or any sort of wood that you can get your hands on, usually plywood because that's the cheapest, especially if you can get used plywood, and you place it on open sandy patches, and that way you can, the skinks will see that as cover so that they don't get eaten by things, and so they go under there and they make their tracks, and then you flip the cover board hoping to either see sand skinks or see their tracks.
Oh, okay. We have a question from Charles Cook. So he asked, would you suggest a survey for endemics such as sand swimmers, which I assume is that a type of lizard?
Well, I'm sort of assuming he's saying those are the sand skinks.
Okay.
Neoseps reynolds, yeah. And
any of the original FWS listing of the 11 endangered and threatened scrub plants. So I guess he's asking, would you suggest that a survey be done of those on the property?
I would very much suggest a rare plant survey. Yes, I think that your chances of sand skinks is pretty low, being that your elevation is not very high there, and I have not been successful in finding sand skinks at a lower elevation in much more potential habitat. If you have not very high acreage of potential habitat. But if you have a cover board and you can get permission to place 3 or 4 cover boards out there, you could find some more interesting herps, snakes, lizards, frogs, so it's worth a try. And I would definitely see if you can get a botanist out there to do a full survey.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so you have that rosemary bald in the center, and then you have sand pine. You have a sand pine scrub sort of in a ring around it. If you're not familiar with sand pines, they sort of look like they just went through a hurricane all the time. They're often leaning over. They have serotinous cones, which means that they don't open until after fire. And they look so much like Christmas trees that actually in the Ocala National Forest, the Seminole State Forest, there's a couple days each year you can go down, cut them down, and use them for Christmas trees. And this was also a lovely video going up into the tops of those sand pines, also in Lake Lizzie Preserve. I would say Lake Lizzie is the most analogous place close to me that I could find to your particular site. Definitely an overgrown, excuse me, oak heavy sandpine scrub and rosemary bald. And as of recently, the scrub days have been extirpated due to poor management and lack of prescribed fire, but we did even have scrub days on site. And that would be quite a pipe dream for you guys if you could get scrub jays back in that small area. So in the reports, you had a lot of these pinweeds, the lechias. Now, my boss, Juliette Rainier, has great affection for the pinweeds, and that has certainly rubbed off on me. And there's these two that are endemic and state threatened. They're in the rock rose family, a family of which I particularly like. So this is the nodding pinweed, Lechia cernua, and it's got these adorable fuzzy leaves and really nice pods. I don't know the technical term for that. And these photos are by Seth Rayner. The pine pinweed is also endemic and state threatened, and it's got a little tighter pod, a little more blueberry-like leaf. And then Deckards pinweed is one that I myself have rescued from our property, well, our rescue site near Claremont. That this rescue site was actually a Florida Forever project, and it didn't get funded. I mean, the funding, obviously our governor and legislature did not appropriate enough funding. And so it languished on the Florida Forever list. And so we are still rescuing plants from this site. So it's not listed endangered, but it is a scrub plant and sandhill plant. So it's a scrub and sandhill specialist, and it's still pretty rare. So this is a photo from one of the rescues that I was at. And to know that you guys have Curtis's milkweed out there is awesome. Milkweeds are very marketable. They're a larval host for queen and monarch butterflies, and a lot of the general public has some knowledge of the monarch butterflies and are aware of monarch decline. It's also endemic and state endangered. So it's one of two, I think, endemic milkweeds. Could someone correct me if I'm wrong on that? Asclepias fei and Asclepias curtisii. I don't think velvet leaf milkweed is endemic, but I could be wrong. Anyway, so this is a very good poster child plant for scrub in Florida. And also it's gorgeous. It has these beautiful sort of flexy oak-like leaves, huge sort of half circle flower heads, gorgeous flowers. Some, the flowers don't open all at once. You can see them sort of pop, 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 pop. And there's some color variation in the flowers. So, and definitely some leaf morphology variation. And yeah, this plant is just gorgeous. And the pollination ecology on these milkweeds is incredible. I mean, the insects actually have to reach into those little slits on the side and pull out the pollinia. If you're a member of the Florida Native Plant Society and you haven't watched Kara Driscoll's talk on Asclepias fei, you should definitely do that as soon as possible. And these photos are by a great botanist, Scott Ward, in somewhere in Polk County. He obscured his coordinates for this one. Okay, and here is one of my favorite plants, Garbers scrub stars. This is a state-threatened endemic plant. It's monophyletic, which means it's the only species in its genus. It's fall-blooming wildflower. It has this incredible, light purple color, and it is a scrub specialist. So this was of some Garbaria being cultivated at Green Isle Gardens. It's a little blurry because it's a video. And so you can see the seed heads and I don't know the name of that term, the little things that make them fly. And so this is in the aster family. So that's why the seeds look like that. Okay, so here's the flower. Here are the flowers. And what's not really being captured here is this can turn into quite a significant hedge. And it seems to like these edges, so edges of trails. And it just becomes this beautiful hedge of white and light purple. And the leaves are really cool as well. So this is one of my favorite plants, and I'm really glad it's coming into cultivation. And if you guys have some of this on site, it's probably, I haven't checked the iNaturalist records for Garbaria, but it's a local ecotype. So it would be great if you could get this property protected and then maybe get some permission to collect seeds and, propagate this as local ecotype Garbaria for the nurseries in your area. Garbaria or Garbers scrub stars. Garbaria heterophylla, Garbers scrub stars, or Garbaria. Okay, so I didn't see tarflower on your plant list, but I wanted to point this out simply because it is very gorgeous and it's a frequent midstory. Ooh, misspelled frequent, sorry guys. It's a frequent midstory plant in many Florida ecosystems. And the buds and the petals are sticky and nobody seems to know why. We had a speaker for our Lunch and Learns who was researching why the buds and petals are sticky, and we didn't really get an answer. So absolutely adore this plant. And this is in pure scrub. You can see it's grown up quite a bit. This is the area that used to have the scrub jays in Lake Lizzie Preserve. I noticed you had some cladonia, which is the deer moss, and also potentially the endangered version of the deer moss. And it's a ground cover in areas that haven't had fire. And it's not a moss or vascular plant, but it's actually a kind of lichen. Oh, Debbie asked what plant list am I referencing and who created it. So I'm referencing two plant lists that were one was the University of Florida reference that Rebecca sent me, and the other was a more recent study. And
yeah, that was the one that was done in 2005 by Art Finn and a couple other people. So I think it was done by City of Dunedin, maybe with cooperation of the county. That was provided to me by Tracy McManus, who has been writing the articles in the Tampa Bay Times.
Thank you. And here's a video that I was going to show of some cladonia in our Sandhill rescue site in Central Florida. And this was a specific species that I wanted to show you guys. This is Jester Lichen, Cladonia leporina from Lake Runnymede Conservation Area in St. Cloud. And then an unknown species. So this is the fruiting body that turns red. So they're very cool. Saw palmetto is dominant midstory plant in many Florida ecosystems. The flowers are important for native pollinators and honeybees. You might know about saw palmetto honey, and the fruits are an important black bear food source here in Central Florida and in North Florida. Obviously, not so much in Pinellas County. There's Scott's finger and the saws, and a silver saw palmetto found at Split Oak Forest. So their silver saw palmetto are not just coastal adaptation. Find them inland as well. Here is probably my favorite scrub fruit, although pawpaws are very nice. It's a hog plum, and they may be hemiparasitic. They're edible. They taste really good. You can make jam or eat them fresh out of hand. They are a scrub specialist, and they kind of sprawl when they grow, but they can form thickets. And I saw this on the plant list as well. This is a very cute low ground cover with, I mean, that photo is not retouched. The yellow and the orange are just really saturated and really cool color. And the matte blue, gray, green leaves, they just sets off really nicely. And it's a small mounding wildflower that is a scrub specialist. And Octoberflower, which maybe at one time it flowered in October, but it does begin to flower in August. It's a pollinator magnet, and it inhabits scrub and flatwoods. So here's some Octoberflower flowering. Ooh, Jan asks, what are hog plums parasitic on? I don't know. Does anyone have an answer for that? Okay, so Rusty Leonia is really amazing, incredibly fragrant flowers. It's an early spring bloomer here in Central Florida. I get a lot of blooms coming out then, although it might bloom at different times, different parts of the state. And it is a scrub and scrubby flatwood specialist. And so here's some of those beautiful campanulate flowers. So they're very bell-shaped. And my first noticing, this, it doesn't look like much. It just looks like a big heath, like a big shrub. It's got little waxy glands on the leaves, sort of like everything else in the scrub, kind of curled up leaves. you don't really notice it if you're not a plant person, which I wasn't really much of a plant person. And you'd be walking through a scrub and you just smell this heavenly smell. And you see these, big red stems shooting up and the beautiful upside down flowers, and that's it, Leonia. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the animals of the scrub. Two of my favorites here of the reptiles are six-line race runner on the left and a coach whip on the right. So it's a snake with a gradient, and the six-line race runners are very, very fast. The tiger beetles are incredible. There's a festive tiger beetle, which I see a lot of in scrubs. I personally call this the party beetle because it's blue and it's also very festive. The mustached tiger beetle, because it has a little mustache. The punctured tiger beetle and the autumn tiger beetle. Now, some of these tiger beetles do not exclusively use scrub, but I've seen all of these species in scrub. And then a pipe dream for you guys, but something that you can see in scrubs elsewhere in the state are scrub jays, the epitome of a scrub animal here in Florida. So my final words for this presentation are, what you have on site are high value ecosystems, high value upland ecosystems that are desperately in need of protection throughout the state. Statewide, they face a high development threat, and something that you guys are very, 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 very familiar with is development pressure, as I am becoming much more familiar with in the Orlando area. And this development pressure will only increase on upland habitats. As we can see in Miami-Dade County, there are places that are protected, high quality upland habitats, and they're promised to be protected, and like the Pine Rocklands, and that they want to put a Walmart on, and that all the permits just went right through. So protecting these habitats and staying on top of their protection is really important, because these are so developable, and the laws do not appear to be very strong when they face large moneyed interests. So preventing the scrubs from being bulldozed so that we have that high value ecosystem, and we have all of that seed bank and all of that biodiversity and all those little ecotypes and all of the fungi and animals and birds and snakes. That is critical, that we maintain these intact ecosystems and defend them, because they're not just going to come back. If we bulldoze them all, they're not going to come back up through the concrete, not the scrub. And many species rely on just this narrow habitat type, and restoration is possible, even if there is some parts of the property that are. Yes, I agree, Charles. Scrub is such an alien and precious ecosystem. It is really worth the effort. And I hope that this property can get protected, because not only is it important for you guys locally to have an example of this ecosystem locally, but it's also something that's happening statewide. Scrub is under threat statewide, and even though your area is small, it's still important to the statewide amount of scrub that we have. And Jan points out that listed plants don't receive the same kind of protections under the ESA. That's right, and that's a federal law. And plants are property. They're not whatever the status is of listed animals, where they're much more protected. Yes, hogplum does have thorns, Suzanne, I think. So I can take questions if anyone has any. Jan has popped in something from our overarching plantsocieties.cnps.org. They have a document about equal protection for plants, and it would be really great if we could get that put through Congress. Okay, so for scrub jays, the scrub jays in Split Oak, they have sort of a 60-acre core area and a 30-acre smaller area. So those are both scrub. And then they have a 100-acre scrubby flatwoods foraging area. So I'm not sure that you quite have area for scrub jays, but I would say like somewhere in the range of 30-ish acres. When I say that I've saved an endangered plant, yes. So in Central Florida, we do a lot of rescues. Our oldest chapter in the Florida Native Plant Society is the tar flower chapter. That's where we started. And so we have a pretty significant infrastructure, i.e. volunteer infrastructure and agreement with native nurseries to go in. We get permission from the landowner. We get all the proper permits if they're endangered plants. And then we dig the plants up if development is imminent. If development is not imminent, then we go in and we collect seeds. And we have an agreement with our partner nursery, Green Isle Gardens. So when we collect the seeds, we bring the seeds to either Green Isle Gardens or Lake Louisa State Park, where they let us set up a little seed sorting station. And Lake Louisa State Park is also one of our restoration areas. So yes, if we can stay ahead of the development long enough, we will collect seeds so that we have a greater sample of that biodiversity. If we can't, we do go in and dig the rarest plants up first, and the ones that are possible, that it's easy to rescue. So there's some plants that are really, really, really hard to rescue with very deep tap roots, or lupines, for example, that just, you touch the tap root and they just crap out. They don't live when you transplant them.
Jan had a question about the split oak forest ballot question.
Yeah, so we just passed a charter amendment in Orange County protecting split oak forest more than it is currently protected. So split oak forest is a conservation area owned by Orange County and Osceola County and managed by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. It was purchased with Preservation $2,000, which is the precursor to the Florida Forever program. And when split oak was protected, both counties and FWC promised the state that they would protect split oak forest in perpetuity under certain conditions. And so if all of them agreed to change the conditions, then they could proceed with, doing something to the property if the state thought that that was okay. So it's like you've got kids and they want to break something, and mom and dad, they have to say yes or no. So what we did is both Orange County and Osceola County bent to the will of the developers, and they sent in an application to change split oak's protection. But we had already started working on this ballot amendment, which would prevent the Orange County commissioners from signing anything to remove split oak's protections. So if Orange County can't sign it, those protections can't be changed. And it passed 86%. That's higher than Florida Forever passed. That's higher than Volusia Forever passed. That's higher than Volusia Echo passed. That's higher than Conservation Collier. So it's higher than the Manatee County land protection. So it is a clear mandate, and we just got the news last night and final news this morning. And so, CFX, the Central Florida Expressway Authority, is still going to try, but the voters have spoken. So some very rare good news. And I've been working on this for 3.5 years, and people told me to not bother, that these people were too powerful, that split oak can't be saved, the protections aren't good enough, you don't have any federally listed species on there, there's no federal money for this road project, so that one thing isn't brought in where you can't affect federally or state listed species. And they just, so many people told me to not bother, and I did bother, and I did bother for a very long time, and it's paying off. So thank you for the congratulations. Yes, I appreciate that.
I tell you, if we don't have any questions right now, I'd like to take just a minute and introduce the chair of our new conservation committee, who is going to be leading our organization forward in the efforts to help to conserve the Gladys Douglas property. So if that's all right with you, Valerie, I'm going to turn Jane's video and audio on and let her talk for just a minute or two about the new committee, what they're doing and when they're going to be meeting and how to participate.
Hi. Thanks so much for the introduction, Rebecca and Valerie. This has been such a great presentation. I really enjoyed looking at all of the different plants, and it gives everyone a great perspective of what we're trying to protect in the Gladys Douglas property. We just reconvened the Pinellas chapter's conservation committee. We had our first meeting a few days ago, and we're really excited. We have a great turnout. If you are interested in joining and you haven't reached out to us yet, we're always looking for interested members, and you can send me an email and I'll send a chat out to everyone. It's conservation@pinellasnativeplants.org. And follow us in our newsletter updates and other things. We're excited. There is a timeline that's ticking because we have about 90 days until January 18th, when the attorney representing the estate of Gladys Douglas says that he's going to open it up to other developers. So we have a short amount of time to very strongly lobby Dunedin and the county and probably members of the state as well, the legislature and other decision makers. So stay tuned, and we love all the help we can get, and please send me an email and anything. We're really happy to have everyone tonight, and thanks again, Valerie. This has been great.
You're so welcome. And if you do speak at any of these commission meetings, let me know, and I can download the video and clip you guys out so you can use it to promote your conservation activities. That's what I do for my local chapter. I do it for Gene, our policy guy, and it really shows that you're working on something. It's not just sitting in some video archive of government stuff.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Valerie. I do have to say that I am quite thrilled at the addition of Valerie and Jane to our board and to our family, and I'm looking forward to some great things.